meeting of the Board of Adjustment of the Township of Franklin has been provided. Would you call the roll, please?
Laura Grauman.
Here.
Donald Johnson.
Here.
Bruce McCracken.
Just walked in.
Bruce McCracken
Oh.
just came,
All right.
just walked in.
Alan Rich.
Yes.
Robert Shepard. Anthony Caldwell asked to be excused. Gary Rosenthal asked to be excused. Joel Reese.
Yep.
Cheryl Bagallo.
Here.
And Chairman Thomas.
Here. Minutes of the regular meeting, July 5th, 2018. Do we have a motion?
I so move. Second.
No.
Laura Grauman.
Yes.
Bruce McCracken.
Yes.
Alan Rich.
Yes.
Cheryl Bagallo.
Yes.
And Chairman Thomas.
Yes. Regular meeting minutes, July 19th, 2018.
I so
Again,
move.
Second. We're on the ball
Bru-
tonight.
Bruce apparently. Bruce McCracken.
Yes.
Joel Reese.
Yep.
And Chairman Thomas.
Yes. Korean Baptist Church Resolution, ZBA 18-00002. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
I second.
Laura Grauman. Donald Johnson. Bruce McCracken.
Yes.
Alan Rich.
Yes.
And Chairman Thomas.
Yes.
Robert Shepard just came in.
Okay, vouchers, Marriott, Callahan, and Blair, $86, New Jersey Chinese Community Church, $244, Tuan, New Jersey Chinese Community Church. I'll take a motion to pay both of them.
So move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now, we'll see if we can do these extension of times as quick as we go through the first part of the meeting. I have my doubts on the first one, but Tabachnik Fine Foods,
All right.
ZBA 15-00018. I don't have my doubts on the value of the application, just on the,
Quality of the attorney representing the applicant.
how
you
much
go.
he can say and how short a time.
All right, Francis P. Linus, 21 Clyde Road, Somerset, New Jersey. I'm pleased to represent Tabachnik Fine Foods, Inc. in connection with this extension of the period of protection of approvals. We represented Tabachnik back in July of 2016. We came before the Board of Adjustment and received D variance approvals, site plan approvals, and bulk variance approvals. Since that time, we have been attempting to complete the resolution compliance phase of the project, and then we find out that we're going to change the product line, which may have an impact on the site plan, so we're probably going to have to make another appearance before the board. But in the meantime, we would like a one-year extension of the period of protection of those approvals.
Any discussion? Any,
Move to approve.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is that a roll call?
Yep. Laura Grauman.
Yeah.
Donald Johnson.
Yes.
Bruce McCracken.
Yes.
Alan Rich.
Yes.
Robert Shepard.
Yes.
Joel Reese.
Yes.
And Chairman Thomas.
Yes. Okay, 11 properties, ZBA 15-00017, same thing, extension of time.
Mr. Chairman, John Wisniewski, Wisniewski and Associates, representing 11 properties. The name on the application is somewhat longer, but to abbreviate it, it's 11 properties. We were here and we had received approval tomorrow night 1 year ago. And the resolution was printed and published on the 16th. We are in a process of preparing an application to get site plan approval. As you recall, the approval granted was a D variance, just a bifurcated application at that time. We are in the final process of putting that together, but we will not make 1 year to get that filed, and so we are asking for a 1 year extension. We anticipate being in for site plan approval long before that.
Any questions or motions?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Laura Grauman.
Yep.
Donald Johnson. Yes. Bruce McCracken.
Yes.
Alan Rich.
Yes.
Robert Shepard.
Yes.
Joel Reese.
Yes.
And Chairman Thomas.
Yes, okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
The item under the discussion section, lawsuits, it's more appropriately placed at the end of the agenda, so we'll take that up for a few minutes then. In the hearings section of tonight's agenda, Surinder and Rano Sinj, ZBA 17-00020, hardship variance in which the applicant is seeking a variance due to his going 1,070 square feet over the previously approved impervious coverage of 3 Buell Street, Somerset, Block 83, Lot 1.04 in the R20 zone is carried to October 4th, 2018. No further notification, if anyone's here for that. I guess that would be okay, it then for that. Ocean State Job Lot, ZBA 17-00009, the first application we will hear. Sign variance in which the applicant is seeking approval for 2 building-mounted tenant signs at Route 27, South Middle Bush Road, Somerset, Block 20.11, Lot 14.01, in the NBR zone, in the NBR20 zone. This has been carried from August 2nd. Notification was needed, and we have Mr. Linus.
And we did provide the notification, Mr. Chairman, so the board does have jurisdiction. Francis P. Linus, 21 Clyde Road, Somerset, New Jersey. I'm pleased to represent Ocean State Job Lot this evening. By way of background, Ocean State Job Lot is the largest closeout retailer in the Northeast. They were started in 1977 up in North Kingston, Rhode Island. Beyond Rhode Island, they have operating stores in all of New England, New York, and New Jersey. They're opening up its store as an anchor tenant in this shopping center. They're going to be occupying approximately 31,000 square feet of space. They're going to be replacing a liquor store and an eye doctor, both moving to other space in the center, and will fill in 2 vacancies. The intent is to revitalize the center as much as we can. The center is located on Route 27, at the corner of Route 27 and South Middle Bush Road.
Excuse me, is that the Steinmart,
That's Steinmart, Peter? No.
no?
No.
'Cause
I think that's, it's not, Steinmart's not the application, but Steinmart, I believe, is in that same shopping center.
Yes, and that's the, I mean, the
the other end.
Steinmart Shopping Center, yes?
Yeah, same.
Okay,
shopping center.
that's what I meant.
That's the shopping
Okay.
center. That's correct. All right. Our proposal is, we're here for signs, okay? We're looking for a variance for the number of building mounting signs. 2 signs are proposed, 1 is permitted. We're looking for a variance from the maximum vertical height and size of the signs. Again, we have 2 signs. 1 will be proposed to be 4 feet 6 inch high and 40 feet wide, totaling 180 square feet. The second sign is proposed to be 5 feet high and 14 feet wide for a total of 70 feet. I have 1 witness tonight, that's Peter Ritchie. He's a licensed architect and also a licensed professional planner, and he'll be providing the testimony for the board and the public. So without further ado, Mr. Chairman, we can swear Mr. Ritchie in.
Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth? Your name and address, please. Could you spell your last name, please?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Anybody coming to table needs to sign in, and you need to use the mic, okay, so that the recording secretary can hear you.
That's great, I'm sorry. I
Okay,
didn't
no
know.
problem.
And do I sign in, is that what this is?
Everybody signs in, yep.
Okay, could he testify?
Later, yes.
Thanks.
Okay, Ritchie, R-I-C-C-I.
Thank you.
All right, Peter, you want to give the board and the public who's here the benefit of your background, qualifications, and experience?
Yes, I hold a Bachelor's of Architecture from NJIT School of Architecture in Newark, graduated 1978. I've been licensed in New Jersey as an architect.
Okay, we're okay with that.
And you also hold a professional planner's license?
Yes, I do.
Okay, all right, and you still have it?
Yes, I do.
Very good, okay. Now, what's your history with Ocean State? Do you have a history with Ocean State?
Yes, they've been my client for approximately 6 years. As it says, they're located, headquarters is in Rhode Island, and most of their stores over the past years have been in New England. About 6 years, they decided to move down south a little bit, south being New Jersey, New York area, Pennsylvania after this. And I made the connection through one of the landlords, and I've been doing work for them for the past 5 or 6 years.
All right, in addition to preparing the plans that's before the board this evening, you're familiar with the Franklin Township sign regulations and the municipal land use law?
I very much am. I read through them quite a bit.
Okay. You want to describe the site briefly and existing conditions and what you're proposing to do?
Yes. I'm very familiar with the site. I also have done work for not the owners of the property, but the leaseholder, which is I'll Hold USA, which I'll Hold USA runs supermarkets. Bear with me, I'm sorry.
Wait a minute, Ahold, I know that they have the lease on the building that's, in which the clothing store
They
is
have the
now
lease on the
located.
complete piece of property.
The whole
The whole
shopping
property, they have
center?
full control to do whatever they want while they're have the lease to do
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yep. And we submitted at some point a document from the actual property owners, Franklin Norse LLC, a company out
Yeah.
of New York, to show that that's the case.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Peter.
So the shopping center is total 138,800 square feet. There are two parts of it. The part that runs parallel to the Route 27, which is all the retail stores, just under 90,000 square feet, and then the old supermarket, which is just over 48,000 square feet. It was mentioned before about Steinmart. Steinmart occupied approximately half of the old supermarket for about 4 years. I'm not too sure how long. And then they moved out. So that supermarket is completely still vacant at this time.
So you're,
No. The supermarket portion is still going to be vacant as of this point. The client Ocean State Job Lot is moving into more, I think that's to the east. At the far end of the shopping center, there is a gym there, located there. And then after the gym, there's one small space, and then there's 4 spaces. The very first one used to be a women's clothing store. I'm sorry, I don't know the name. After that was a liquor store, which just recently relocated in the shopping center. Next to that was 20/20 Vision, an eyeglass optometrist, which just recently relocated in the center also. And then after that was a vacant space, which was previously occupied by CVS. So they're going to take those 4 spaces.
this is all,
Laura, can you speak into the mic, please?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Those spaces are along Route 27 or right angles to? Route
No, they
27?
run parallel to
Parallel
Route 27.
Okay, I was just trying to visualize it.
Yes, they're set back off the road.
Got it.
And I know we're going to get into this, but how far back is the building
The
set
face
back?
of the building from the sidewalk on Route 27 is just a little bit over 300 feet away.
All right, you want to describe what we're proposing
Okay, I'm sorry.
and utilize whatever exhibits you brought with you?
Yeah, just bear with me 1 second. I hope I do this.
We were told to do it this way.
Okay. This exhibit you have in your set. This exhibit is just the portion of the building where Ocean State is going to occupy. If you look to the right, on the bottom elevation is the proposed elevation. The elevation above that is the existing elevation, and there are just 2 sections above them, so we could ignore the sections for right this moment. So the upper elevation shows the building the way it is now. There is the higher, we'll call tower, is where the clothing store used to be. Then you go to the left, there's a pair of, where the lower roof is, there's a pair of double doors. That was the entrance for the liquor store. You go to the left of that, there's a single 3-foot door. That was the entrance for the eye optometrist. And then you go all the way to the left, there's a small tower. That was the entrance to CVS when they were here a long time ago. This shopping center has elements, design elements on it. It's all basically red brick. It has a green standing seam metal roof. And then there are 4 of these small towers, the one that I'm showing all the way on the left. Give you an example. If you went further down where the library is underneath one of those towers. There's a nail salon, hair cutting salon, underneath one of those towers, and I don't remember who the other one is. And then there's two large towers, the one on the right, which was always meant to be an anchor, and the clothing store that was here had quite large square footage, I can tell you that in a moment. And then the other large tower element was on the, and is on the supermarket. So the intent was, when somebody designed the shopping center a long time ago, the supermarket, of course, would be the major anchor, and then there would be another anchor towards the other end of the mall where this taller tower element is located.
So this would be categorized as an anchor, if you will?
That is, it should be and it will be. What we are proposing is to, again, the liquor store has moved, the optometrist have moved, all four of these places, all the walls are going to be taken out, they're going to be gutted, it's going to become one large space. It's going to get all new bathrooms inside, all new finishes inside. And then the large tower is where we want to attract the people to notice and go to, so that's where the main sign is being located. We do ask, and we've asked for a second sign located on the other tower. The elevation is
Wait, on the other tower or on the other side of the tower?
No, that's the small tower on the other side of the four stores. That is right next to a restaurant, a family restaurant is located there right now.
Are you going to have two signs facing Route 27?
Actually, the large one faces 27. The other one is on a 45-degree angle facing towards the old supermarket, where the majority of the parking is, so it faces that area there. And it also faces, that's the main entrance when you come in off of Route 27. When you come in, you're coming close to that second small tower. Okay, so we're proposing two signs, which we, the shopping center is struggling. It's been struggling. I've been working with the landlord on this shopping center for maybe 8 or 9 years. And they had Steinmar come in, as you know. Unfortunately, that did not work as being an anchor and drawing enough people to have other tenants come in. Ocean State came in. Ocean State felt they were given the opportunity of taking this space or the supermarket. They felt that this space was centrally located in there and that it would be beneficial to them. And of course, if they're successful, then hopefully a lot of the vacancies will go away and they'll be able to get additional tenants in there.
All right, did you compare the size of our signage that we're proposing with the size of signs on site in a neighboring shopping center?
Yes, first, there are numerous signs on this building. There are two of them that are going away or being relocated right in front of the middle of this area. There's the liquor store sign and there's the 2020 Vision sign. They're taking off of the face of the building where Ocean State is going to come, of course, and they moved over to be in front of the spaces that they are now. And there are other signs that are on the building for other tenants. Now, one of the comments we received from the planner was about the size of the signs that we're requesting. The sign we're requesting is the larger sign. By the way, your ordinance says we're allowed one sign. We're asking for two. The ordinance says that the sign could be 3 foot high as a maximum, 30 square feet is a maximum. 30 square feet, 3 feet is only 10 feet.
That's 10 feet wide and 3 feet high. That's
Correct.
right.
That
Okay.
would make 30 feet. I'm
Right.
sorry if I said it wrong,
Okay.
I apologize.
Square feet.
30 square feet. That's what would be allowed. If you were a small tenant in the shopping center, that would be fantastic. Matter of fact, it may be too big, especially being the 3 foot high. To be a 32,000 square foot anchor that's going to occupy 23% of the whole shopping center gross area, and the scale of what the building is here, we felt that that was extremely small, and that's why we're asking for more. In addition, certain signs are easier to fit into a town's ordinance. I'm doing a store in another location. It's called the I store, the letter I, store. And so STORE, 5, letter I, it's 6 letters, the whole thing. We're fitting into the town ordinance extremely easy because they've got a small amount of writing. Ocean State Job Lot, that's the name of their company, that's their logo. They have more letters, it takes up a little bit more space. It would be extreme, the sign would be minuscule if we tried to fit it into the 30 square feet. And the proportions of the building, we feel, warrant asking for more. A comparison that I wanted to look at was what was close to this. Well, the closest shopping center of any type that's to this site is the new Stop and Shop, which is just east on 27. The new Stop and Shop, if you go into that and look at that building, it's nice. I'm not saying anything bad about it. It's very nice, but it has lots of signs, all advertising fresh food, great meat, welcome, all kinds of things. But it has their logo and their signage. Now, their signage is Stop and Shop. Okay? And then they've got, I don't even really know what the logo is. It looks like fruit or something next to it. But the Stop and Shop sign, single sign on the name of that building is, I don't want to get that wrong, 5 feet tall. Remember, we're asking for 4'6". It's 5 feet tall, but it's only 30 foot 6 inches long because it's only Stop and Shop, not Ocean State Job Lots, more words. But it's taller than even what we're asking for. Now, if you include the logo, which is part of it right next to the sign, the logo is 6 foot 8 inches tall. And when you put it together with the Stop and Shop, the length is just under 39 feet, and the square footage is 261.5 square feet. We're asking for 180. And they've got, in addition to that, many, many other signs on the building, which I went there, and I don't think they're out of, it's not flashy looking. It's from my opinion, I think it fits the scale of the building at all. So what we're asking for in the 4 foot, 6 foot sign and 180 square feet, I believe, and I can show you, we did a rendering and such, what I think, and I hope you agree, fits in the scale of the building. Okay, what you're seeing is a rendering. It's not a true photo or anything, but it's all to scale that we prepared of the building. The red brick that's existing, the green standing seam metal roofs, those are all existing. Here are the building shown as a perspective. So what you're seeing is the major entrance is further down. Showing you the Ocean State Job Lot sign above the
And for
larger
the
tower.
record, that second sign is angled, right? It's not directly
That's
facing
correct. This is
okay.
the one that I said is at a 45-degree angle facing towards the old supermarket. Excuse me. Okay, so this is a rendering of all to scale of what the signage would look like. And by the way, the smaller one on the smaller tower almost appears a little bit bigger, but that's because it's a perspective. It's closer to you. And when it's going to do that, when something looks bigger when it's closer to you.
Okay, did I ask you to review, before you got here, the Franklin Township sign regulations, more specifically, Section 112-106?
Yes, the statement of purpose and intent.
Right. Okay, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I would like you to relate the ordinance to our proposal. Do you believe that the signs that we're proposing are orderly, readable, and appropriate to the activity in which they pertain?
Most definitely. We hope it clearly describes, and people will get to know them better, what it is, and it's in scale of the proportions of what should be there.
Do you believe that the signs we're proposing are compatible with its surroundings?
Very much so. I don't think they're out of, I think, again, scale is an important portion, word here, that they fit into the scale of what this building is.
Are there any other signs in that shopping center that approach anything like this size?
Not presently, when the.
Well, that's what I mean, but
That's
presently
correct.
is what we're talking about.
That's correct.
Right.
When and if the supermarket gets occupied by another tenant or another 2 tenants or 3 tenants, which is very possible, they will have signs most likely very much in scale with what you're looking here.
Do you believe that the signs we're proposing are complementary to the character of the community?
Yes, I do.
And do you believe that the signs we're proposing are non-distracting to motorists so as to not contribute to traffic accidents?
They're definitely not. They're internally illuminated lights. They don't flash. They don't shine bright outside of the box. It's just to be able to be read from a distance.
Or now, let's take the negative aspects of the ordinance. Franklin Township, among other towns, discourage and render unlawful signs which represent an overloaded, overstated system of graphics that defeats its communicative purpose. Do we do that?
Yes, I think we do. And if you look at the rendering.
Whoa, we do not.
I'll take that answer.
No.
I'll take that answer. That's a home run, thanks.
Yes.
Make sure that's not in the resolution. Tom.
Oh, that's got to be there.
I meant it's not an overload, is what I was saying in that, okay? And you can see there's a large portion of the building that has no signs on it at all. And
Well,
it shouldn't.
that's the design that you show. You don't show anybody else's sign, do you?
In this area that you are looking at, between our 2 signs, there are no other tenants, there are no other signs.
He's removing signs.
He's removing the signs that are there.
Yes,
Right, and what you're going to be doing is placing these enormous signs in 2 aspects, 2 locations on the building where, and if you go immediately to the left, there's also a number of signs there, is there not?
yes, there are,
Right.
yes.
But
there
again,
are.
these 2 signs will embrace the entire 31,000 square foot building, if you will, with no other signs in that building, on that building. Yes, no? Bill?
Yes, that is correct.
Oh, okay.
And to give you just one example, one sign, there were 2 signs here, a liquor store, I forgot the exact words. I believe the other sign was 2020 Vision. 2020 Vision occupies roughly 1,200 square feet. If you considered, and this should never be considered, but if you considered 1,200 divided it by, into the 30,000, we can put 15 signs of that size, and it would be overwhelming with signage. So when you have a larger tenant, you're not looking for that, but you are looking for a sign that fits with the scale of the building.
All right, continuing with the testimony, do you believe that the signs do not contribute to visual pollution and clutter?
That's correct.
All right, okay. And do you believe that the signs, no, I asked that, okay. Did you also take a look at the municipal land use law when it talks about reasons for granting variances?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And is there one section of the municipal land use law that you think is appropriate for the board's consideration as the positive criteria to support the grant of the variance?
Yes, Section I, I'm just going to read it off there. It says, the intent is to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement. So that is why the arrangement of these 2 signs, the towers were always meant to be to attract what's happening inside that shopping center. Smaller towers, smaller items, bigger towers, bigger items, and all of that. So taking the signs off of all the area in between actually, I believe, cleans up the facade quite a bit.
All right. Now, do you believe, let's talk about the negative criteria, because when you're applying for a variance, you're either seeking a C1 variance or a C2 variance. In this instance, we're proposing that we can establish proofs for a C2 variance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, so let's talk about the negative criteria. I think you've addressed the positive criteria. If the signs we're proposing, do you believe they would, if they're granted, the size of the signs we're proposing, would that pose a substantial detrimental impact on the zone plan or scheme?
I don't believe so at all.
Okay. How about the public good? Do you think it would have a substantial detrimental impact on the public good?
I would think there would be no detriment.
Okay. In a C2 analysis, you have to weigh it. Do you believe that the benefits of these deviations substantially outweigh any detriment?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Okay, question.
Please.
What, just explicate for me, please, the public good, because you're giving very perfunctory answers. Do you think that this is this way? Do you think this is, yeah.
Yeah, you want to support your conclusion, if you can?
Yes, I can. I'll do. Let me also, in the meantime, bring up just another of the,
Forget to support your conclusion.
I won't. Okay. I want to bring this. This is a photograph. This is superimposed, the signage to scale on the photograph. The photograph was taken a few weeks ago, and we put the signage on there to show you through this. We are standing at the sidewalk in front of the street, which is approximately 300 feet away. So the intent of this was to show you scale from where the public is traveling by. This isn't a building that is set off the road very closely. So the intent is here, most important to promote the business that's happening at this center. And this center is struggling for the fact that its main anchor, being a supermarket, which supported all of the other anchors, moved out. And when that happens, ever since then, they've not had an anchor able to come in that can support them. An anchor that wants to come in is not going to be, if any small tenant, there's been sandwich shops in here, I'm sorry, I drew a blank, Subway, there's been other tenants in here. Any of those tenants that come in, they cannot make an impact enough to help the shopping center draw enough people to fill up and then get other tenants. You need a larger draw. A larger draw, I said, this is 32,000 square feet. When there's the 138,000, we're at 23% of all the square footage of the whole shopping center for this one tenant. So that one tenant has what we believe the draw power to bring enough, hopefully enough, you look at the parking lot on this photo that we're looking at, the parking lot's empty. The parking lot's empty the majority of the time. So if they can get enough people coming to the center, then the other vacancies that are there will hopefully turn over into other stores and maybe even another anchor at the other far end.
You understand, of course, that Ahold is a food store company, correct?
Of course I do.
Right. Do you think that Ahold is going to allow another food store to enter into this shopping center for the length of time that they have leased the entire thing?
No.
Right.
They're not, and they're not looking for a food store. That's why Ocean State coming here is a retail store. Steinmart, when they came in, was a retail store, and I've done this for Ahold quite a few times, and they look for other retail centers that can come in and take over these spaces.
Right. So you keep talking about, well, maybe there'll be another tenant that's got some sort of food store that's going to move into this space.
I'm sorry.
There's no food store that's going to move in.
No. If I did say that, I apologize. Never meant there's no intent, as long as Ahold has the leasehold on the property, for that to be a food store. That's correct. I'm sorry if I said that.
Okay, get back to the public good, surrounding area. What surrounds the site?
Well, Route 27 is primarily commercial, as you all know.
What's
better than I
directly
do.
across the street from that shopping center? Apartments,
Okay,
okay? All
Thank
right.
you.
What's to the left of that shopping center?
there's also housing of some sort.
It's a senior citizen facility or assisted living facility. What's to the right of that shopping center?
More retail.
No,
Across-
no retail. It's also apartments and other living space for people. I believe it's all rented apartments.
Okay,
All right?
so
How about lighting? Is the sign's going to be lit?
the sign will be internally illuminated, correct?
Will it be on 24 hours a day?
No, it would not be. It would be it would go on approximately a half an hour before the store opens and close, and turned off within an hour after the store closes, is the intent.
Signs make any noise you're aware of?
No, not at all.
Chairman, two questions. What's the square footage again of job lot?
To be exact, it's 31,150.
Okay, and what's the linear feet of store frontage that they're going to have?
Caught me. I'm sorry, I don't have that off the top of my head.
Do you have an approximate figure?
Yeah, no, I don't have them there. Bear with me. Approximately 160 feet.
Okay, so with the square footage, I think you said 31,000, is that right?
Yes, sir.
31,000 and 160 feet of frontage. Realistically, if this was a series of smaller stores as opposed to one larger store, how many smaller stores could realistically that be chopped up into?
Well, it was chopped up at one time into 5 spaces. Most recently, it was into 4. That one being all the way on the right, the clothing store had the largest, it was an anchor. It was underneath this canopy, and it occupied 8,715 square feet. So, again, that was an anchor that was underneath this large canopy, 8,700. This tenant's going to occupy 31,000.
So at least 5, and could it possibly be chopped up into more?
Yes, it could. And good and or bad, the more tenants you have, the more signs you, of course, have. Because each tenant, no matter what size, is going to be able to get a sign. And they should be able to get a 30-square-foot sign, so you can have multiple 30-square-foot signs without any variance at all.
Any other board questions?
The physical fitness that's on the corner,
Yes, sir.
what kind of signs do they have up?
That's a good question. I don't have the size of their signage.
But they do have a sign?
Yes, absolutely, they do.
As large as this one or smaller?
No, it is not as large as this one. They occupy 13,000 square feet. The gym does, just to give you a comparison also. And they have side facade facing
South Middlebush?
South Middlebush. So they have frontage on 2 roads. When Steinmart went in, I had nothing to do with their store, but they had their Steinmart sign on the front facade of their building, which faced in towards the parking lot. And they had a Steinmart sign on the side, that would be the south facade of the building, facing Route 27, being only about 50 feet away from Route 27. So they had 2 signs there. And again, I don't know the size of those, but they were not small signs, neither one of them.
Any other questions? That's your witness, right?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
We'll open to the public, and if there is anyone who wants to make a comment or ask a question about this application, this would be the time to do it. Okay, we'll close. No one's coming forward. Any other comments from anybody?
Just very briefly, I think we've established the case for the signs, the sign variances. I think we've satisfied both the positive and negative criteria of the statute. I think you've got a situation on a specific piece of property, that a shopping center that is sought to be revitalized, a struggling shopping center, and they're reaching out for an anchor. And I think we should all be very proud of the fact that Ocean State would like to locate its retail space, 31,000 square feet, here in Franklin Township, and I think they deserve to be to have notice so that people can see where they are. Again, they are the anchor store, and I think the testimony of the witness here is that hopefully that'll drive the shopping center into full vitality. If you take a look at the signs and the perspective, it's about 300 feet away from Route 27. The motorist on 27 should be able to see the sign. I think that's the purpose of a sign. I think we've gone through the sign regulations, and the purpose of the sign regulations, we've met all the positive indicators and met all the negative indicators. So I think the board can safely support the request.
May I say one thing? In reference to the perspective here, this is a direct shot perpendicular to the building when you're standing on the sidewalk in front of Route 27. You can see the building, you can see the sign. There's rows of trees here on both sides. If you go a little bit before heading towards it or a little bit after, you don't see the sign at all because you're looking through the trees. I want to give one comparison. Here, this is our center on the right. I don't know what that means. Goes from here to here. This is, I believe, the location of the restaurant is there. They have their signage, like everybody else does, on the brick wall above the standing seam canopy. You could barely even see that a sign exists there. They are a small tenant. That's in scale to the signs that should be there. You should get into the site and then find out who all this, you shouldn't be able to see from the highway 10 different signs and be able to read them all well. You should be able to see the anchors. The anchor is there, and the smaller tenant, sorry about that, hope I do it right. Then the smaller tenant, you would only see those signs when you're up close in the parking lot. And that's an example of how small the smaller signs look from far away.
Is that what the sign's going to look like? It's going to be red letters with a white background?
That's correct. Yes, sir. We tried to depict it to be as accurate as possible.
I have a problem with that sign, because I agree that there has to be a certain measure of visibility. The difficulty I have is with the other sign, only because what you showed us in the rendering, as you pointed out, was disproportionate because of the angle and what I wish I had a better sense of what that smaller sign would look like.
Well, but to give you an example, can
you bring up that rendering? 'Cause
Sure.
It may help the
and
discussion.
I hope this helps you. I don't know if it does or doesn't, but the size of the other sign is much smaller.
No, I understand that, but from that angle, of course, it's larger, and I'm just saying that I wish I could visualize.
Because this sign is only, at that location, 70 square feet, where the other sign is 180 square feet. So it is much smaller. Like I said, if I put my two hands, and that's what's happening, the way we took the perspective, because we wanted to show you that one sign was actually at an angle towards the supermarket, not towards the front of the road.
So the angle, as I take it, is interior to the shopping center
It's
itself?
interior. When you're out at the, on Route 27, you will not clearly see that other sign at all.
So the purpose of that sign would be for people within the shopping center, the parking lot? to be
Within the
located?
shopping center, on the other far end of the shopping center, or coming in the feeder channel that comes in off of Route 27 that brings you into the shopping center. And then you will
And
see
the one
that.
sign would not be sufficient?
Be honest with you, what we feel is because of the massive length of this building, of this one tenant space, this sign is going to be the main sign over the entrance is all the way over by the gymnasium. So people are coming into the side road, I keep drawing a blank on the name of the side road.
South Middlebush?
When
Yeah,
they.
South Middlebush.
South Middlebush. When they come in there, they're gonna see the gym, they're gonna see Ocean State right away. When somebody comes in at the far end, if they're anywhere near the other end of the building where the library is, and now where the eye doctor is, and all those other tenants there, if this sign wasn't there, they won't even see the main sign.
Sure they will. Are you kidding? The only way you can get in that shopping center is through the entrance that's in the middle of the parking lot. You're not allowed to enter over by where Steinmart used to be. You have to go
No, not by
into the center
Steinmart.
of the facility. And you're going to be able to see that giant abomination of a sign from the road or from anywhere else. The fact that you've got some sort of a folly going on where you think you need a second sign because you're not going to see the first sign is just another act of overreaching here. You're certainly going to be able to see that sign from no matter where you enter that shopping center.
I'm not trying to argue with you, that's
Yes,
not
you
my.
are, but that's okay. That's your job.
Well, it also happens to be your opinion, though, is that correct?
Yes.
Any other questions?
Main entrance for Job Lot is under the tower,
Under the tower to the right, to your right as you're looking at the photo.
far right.
Correct. That's not the main entrance, that's the only entrance.
That's the only entrance.
Yes, one entrance, one exit. There are other exits, strictly emergency egress in the case of an emergency.
That's the main.
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
I just have a comment. The signs in that center are very difficult to see, especially because of the trees and the distance that everything is set back. And you almost have to be stuck in traffic to be able to see anything that's going on in that center. It's like I'm stuck in traffic. Oh, now I can finally see what's in there. So I think there's also a safety factor of people who might want to come here. They don't see the sign. They don't know where they're going. So there's benefit to having larger signs.
Other comments?
Yeah, just when you said you were going to clean it up, I think it's pretty clean. I think you've definitely cleaned it up.
The shopping center?
Yeah, you took down those other signs.
Oh, yes.
Clean, all you do is.
Yeah, and
It's very attractive.
there's work being done in the shopping center now, so it's hopefully going to get regenerated. Excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just offer a few comments. One of the reasons why I did ask the architect how many spaces, how many stores can be in there is so you couldn't understand that if it was, and if Job Lot goes, stores come and go. It has been 5 stores in the past. It can be up to, I'll say, 6 stores in the future. And by right, without going to the planning, going to the zoning board, they could have every single store have 30 square foot sign, every so many feet. 6 stores, 30 square feet, that is 180 square feet. So I wanted you to understand that you could have overall, the same amount of overall signage if it was chopped up as a regular shopping center would be. What I would recommend that you think about is, I think our ordinance does have a bit of a shortfall where it comes to these larger stores. We are the ordinance says 30 square feet. So every once in a while, once or twice a year, you have applications like this, like the Stop and Shop, and I think Steinmart came to you, where you have these larger anchor stores with much larger facades that obviously want to be larger than 30 square feet for a number of reasons, visibility, and they commonly argue, and I think they have here, just scale of the building, that a 30 square foot sign would look silly on a building of that size. What I'd recommend is you think about, well, is this 30 square feet, I think, in my opinion, would be silly, but how much larger should they be allowed to go? Is the 180 square foot sign that they're proposing in scale with the size of the building? And then there's the other issues that have been brought up in terms of the visibility from Route 27, the trees that block visibility. And then the second variance is the fact that they have two signs. So, when I look at this, I can kind of separate the two. I think the one larger sign that's 180 is one issue. Then there's the other sign that's 70 square feet. I can understand that the comments that are being made by the architect in terms of visibility. I think one thing that hasn't been brought up is, I think almost from an aesthetic point of view, if you have that large area on that tower that's basically calling for a sign. I think it would almost look weird if there was that white blank space that didn't have a sign. Now, does it need to be 70 square feet? I think that's for them to prove to you. But I think just the makeup of the building, the layout, the fact that it's just one large tenant taking up almost a quarter of the building, I think there should be a sign in that space. So I just want to offer that to you.
Any other comments?
I'm familiar with that shopping center with this, which and I don't see any problem with those signs. I've seen Job Lot, the Ocean Job Lot. I think it is in Middlesex Mall, recently opened there in South Plainfield. Yeah, and I think the signs are about the same. Here in Franklin, we've spent a lot of time and money on the council and so forth to try and entice new business here. I mean, I'd rather see a store like that with a sign that size than empty stores. And I don't think that sign disturbs anyone living near the store. Maybe across the street if they use binoculars to see it from across the street. But I don't see any problem. I think we should help encourage stores, and as Mr. Healy said, if each store, if we had a bunch of individual stores and added up the size of the sign, the 6 different signs would look more ugly or worse than the 1 or 2 big signs that we're proposing there. I think we should approve it.
I was just pulling up Google Earth for just to get a sense of I'm familiar with the shopping center, but I haven't been there in a while. I think you would have done yourself a favor to have some kind of a site plan so that you would see this in kind of proportion to the entire shopping center, because when I look down at Google Earth, I have to say that the signs that you're proposing make sense. But in terms of what you would have presented to us, I had to pull this up on my phone to get a sense of it, whereas what you did was provide us with a very small portion of the area that was going to be affected by the signs, and you don't get a sense of the scope. The fact of the matter is that I think that probably the signs make sense, but that's based on what I just looked at, which is not part of what's been offered up.
Well, what is in the record is the TRC report.
Yeah.
And there is an aerial photograph that does show. So I mean,
Well, I saw the aerial, but that didn't.
The reason I bring that up is, the fact that you look at Google Earth. Well, that's what is actually in part of the record, because it is part of the report. Okay. So I think the board can rely upon that because it is part of the record.
Well, I was much more comfortable when you showed the renditions of the sign on the computer than when I saw it on the prints, because it seems really a little out of proportion in the paperwork, and it's bold. And I think that brings the other thing, I think, is that the combination of colors, red on the white background, really make it stand out, which is what you are trying to accomplish. Could possibly fit in a little better if the background were a little more subdued, but that might or might not be able to happen. This is a shopping center. It's had a long history of struggling. Nobody would like to see it empty. I don't think, I'm not particularly thrilled with the way the plan looks, but I don't think there's anything outrageous. I think they will serve a purpose, and if this store makes it and attracts other tenants, that's a benefit for Franklin. If it doesn't make it, it won't be here. We don't have to worry about the signs. That's just my feeling right now. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think I'd like to say something about my feelings about this. First of all, we've talked a little bit about it being a struggling shopping center, but one of the reasons it's a struggling shopping center is because Ahold holds the lease on the entire property. I thought they only held the lease on the food store, but obviously a shopping center like this, to be successful, needs a food store, and I think that that Ahold's position of not allowing a food store in there because they're just down the road, while it makes economic sense for Ahold, it really doesn't. You can't really come here and talk about a struggling shopping center if the party that holds the lease on the shopping center is the main reason, in my opinion, that it's struggling. I look at those signs, and Bob Thomas may have put it best. I look at the size of these signs and the coloration of these signs, being the white and the red. It just screams honky-tonk to me, and I find them to be obscene as compared to what the shopping center looks like now. It's a relatively subdued environment, and there's stores in there. It hasn't been fully occupied by tenants in a while. Obviously, the liquor store is moving over to a different place. Some things are happening. But I look at these signs and I shake my head. I just think they're horrible. I hold a minority opinion on this board about that, but I think the other aspect of this is, how about we have only one ugly sign and not two? I think that's where they have really gone over the top, is by proposing the second sign that looks sort of on an angle toward Route 27, and I don't really see why we should grant them the second variance of allowing them two signs.
Actually, it's not on an.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's not my recollection, but that's okay. I just don't think that they should have two large, oversized signs in this shopping center. If one of the signs is going to be 180 square feet, the other one's going to be 70. I don't think that they need that. And I'm troubled by the general appearance of the sign, the size of the sign, and everything. So I just needed to express myself and my opinion on this. I don't think it's complementary to the area. I think it's what I would describe as visual pollution, and I don't think it's a better alternative than a compliant development under the zoning plan, and I think that including it would be a substantial detriment to the public good. So I just don't, I'm offended by it, and but I can tell that I'm in the minority here, but I had to express myself.
Any other comments? We get a motion?
I move to approve.
Can we have a time frame in that, please? Like, he said it would be a half an hour before dark till like, when they close.
That's fine with me.
The hours of operation are typically on their stores 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I said, you know, the question is going to be asked, so the availability to turn it on a half an hour before they're open and an hour after, so make sure people are gone and cleared the parking lot and everything else. And the lights, of course, would not stay on at night.
I agree with the change in ZBA 18-00009.
Any other input for the motion? Or second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Hold board, please.
Laura Grauman,
Yes.
Donald Johnson,
Yes.
Bruce McCracken,
Yes.
Alan Rich,
Yes.
Robert Shepherd,
Against.
Joel Reese,
Four.
and Chairman Thomas.
4.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody likes it when it's done.
Okay, Meridian Developers, ZBA 18-00007, site plan with use variance in which the applicant seeking approval for demolition of the existing buildings, construction of a 2-story apartment building consisting of 8 one-bedroom apartments, along with a 14-space parking lot, 52 Norma Avenue and Franklin Boulevard, block 20234, lots 2 and 8 in the OP zone, carried from July 19th with no further notification.
I'm not like.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Peter Lanford appearing on behalf of the applicant. As you indicated, this is an application for a use variance on behalf of Meridian Development for a property located with frontage both on Franklin Boulevard and Norma. The property is 50 feet wide and approximately 250 feet in length, and it is angled. It is not a 50-foot straight back depth. We are here this evening for use variance because the property is in an OP zone. An OP zone allows offices, and it also allows 1- and 2-family homes. What we intend to do, if the board were to grant the approval, would be to demolish the existing structures and construct a new building with 8 one-bedroom apartments, in essence, in the area where the current structures lay. I was sitting here during the last application when Mr. Shepherd talked about some ugliness. I'm going to show you some photographs. This is probably the ugliest piece of property I've ever seen in 45 years of handling these types of applications.
This is before you've done anything.
This is the current condition. Hopefully, what you'll see when we're done, it'll be a significant improvement. I call as my, also by way of presentation this evening, I will be presenting testimony from the applicant, our site engineer, our architect, and a planner. I will call Frank as my first witness.
Good evening.
You going to get through tonight?
They all should be very quick, yes.
Could
If
you raise
not,
your,
I'll come back.
You swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth? Yes, sir. Your name and address, please.
You have to use a mic.
Frank Asuncio, 52 Hillcrest Road, Bridgewater, New Jersey.
Frank, you're the owner of, actually Meridian Development is the owner of the property?
Yes, sir.
And you are a principal in Meridian?
That's correct.
Okay. When did you purchase the property?
Approximately about a year ago.
Okay. And do you own any other property in the vicinity of the subject property?
Yes, my family owns the adjacent garden-style apartment building to the left
Okay.
of the subject property.
Okay, so to the left of the subject property is a garden apartment building. How many units?
14,
And when did your family purchase that?
approximately 4 years ago.
And is it fully occupied?
It is.
And when you purchased that building approximately 4 years ago, what was the condition of that building?
The apartments definitely needed some work, to say the least. We renovated about 80% of the apartments as people have gone and come in for new leases. Did some adjustments, some renovations outside the building, paper walkway to the rear, to the laundry area in the back.
Okay. The property that is the subject of this application, did you take some photographs of the property?
I did this morning.
Okay, and I have a packet of photographs.
6 sets.
There are 6 sets. I'd like to keep one here and then pass 5 out that the board members can share, and I guess we can mark it as A1.
A1 with today's date, please.
Okay, for the record, A1 consists of 13 photographs.
This is open.
Frank, when you purchased the property, I don't take credit for the stapling.
Nor do you take the blame, apparently.
No. When you purchased the property, from whom did you purchase it?
It was actually a bank sale.
Okay, so a bank owned it. And when you purchased it, the property was vacant. Were there any occupants in any of these buildings?
They were not.
Okay. And when you purchased the property and went through it, and it's contained in Mr. Healy's report, basically the buildings in question had 5 apartments. There was a 1-bedroom, 2 two-bedrooms, and 1 3-bedroom unit in there?
That's correct, 5 in total.
Yeah. Can you very briefly take the board through what these photographs represent and what you're trying to accomplish in giving the board these photographs?
Sure. My main intent is just to show the board the dilapidated position of these buildings. Again, it'd be better for me to save a structure and more cost-effective, but when touring these units, you can see that there really is no way to salvage the current state of this the building, the way it stands. There's subfloors. I build homes as well. There's subfloors there with no concrete slab underneath it, just sitting floor joists sitting on dirt subfloor. So the buildings are really in a state of disrepair.
Have also the buildings been vandalized and parts of the buildings gone at the present time?
Correct. Yeah, well, I've heard from my tenants that there's people congregating in the back on occasion. There's people dumping trash there. Again, I've already taken out 3 loads of, I have a Mason dump truck. I've already taken 3 loads of garbage out of there periodically through my ownership because it's hard to catch somebody dumping it at all hours. So yeah, like I said, it's pretty bad.
And what effect does this building have on the apartment building that you own next door?
Well, of course, it's an eyesore, as you guys can see. The main concern, though, is the people that congregate behind it. That, again, people don't know, people are nervous about the people around the building at all hours of the night.
Is that why you bought it?
Excuse me?
Is that why you bought it?
Well, I bought it actually because my pride would be, actually, I'm trying to tear it down to enhance my building.
That's what I'm saying.
Correct.
And now, the proposal, and I'll have the architect go through the renderings, is for 8 one-bedroom units, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you have a sense as to whether you would be able to market and rent these units out should this project be approved?
Absolutely. It's funny, whenever I get a tenant that leaves our current building right next to the left, we get at least five phone calls, of people saying, "Hey, I heard there's somebody leaving that building, even though we didn't advertise it. Is there an opening? Can we submit an application?" So I feel I'll have no problem renting it out.
So that there is a need for rental units in this area?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the plan is basically to demolish everything, and the architect and engineer will go into it, and build a brand-new building, and also not disturb generally any of the wooded areas that are in the rear portion of that property. Is that correct?
That is correct. Not saving anything, yeah.
Basically, all of the improvements that you will be making are on the areas that are already, I use the word loosely, improved.
Correct.
Okay. No further questions of this witness.
Any board
Thank you.
Hey, Mark?
Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
Yes, sir.
Your name and address, please.
Mark Marcel, M-A-R-C as in cat, I-L-L-E, 505 Main Street, Metuchen, New Jersey.
Mr. Marcel, what is your occupation?
I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey since 2004.
Can you give the board the benefit of
We'll
your...
accept that he's licensed here and practicing.
Okay, and you appeared before planning boards prior to this evening?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and you were retained by Meridian to prepare the architectural plans for the new building if the board were to grant the variance, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and as I indicated in my opening, the building is 8 one-bedroom units?
That is correct.
And on 2 stories?
2 stories, yep.
And what are the approximate sizes of each of the units?
Each apartment is just over 600 square feet.
Okay. Can you describe what the building will look like and what materials will be used to construct the new building?
Yes, the intent of the design was to create a residential feel, as it is a residential building. So we used residential design elements such as gable roof lines, shutters, cultured stone, vinyl siding, small portico entries for the 2 entrances to the building. The building is 30 feet by 90 feet, 2 stories, a partial basement for laundry and storage and meters for the building. So it's pretty compact, should be pretty comfortable, and pretty welcoming for the tenants.
Are the pictures that I see on the right, are they somehow compressed? Because, at least the one direction, because it would seem, when I look at the blueprint that I have, the building looks long in one direction, and those pictures make it almost look like the building is square.
The rendering on the upper right-hand corner is the rear elevation of the building, so that's the just under 30-foot width.
And what about the side?
Back of the building. The side of the building.
You have one for the side?
There
we go.
Is on page
Okay.
A2
All right.
of this submission, which you should have in your package.
Yep. I
So
get it
again,
now.
designed residentially, series of windows, covered portico entries for the 2 main entrances to the building.
So operationally, you have 2 entrances as you're facing the building from Norma on the right side, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and those 2 entrances, what do you have, 1 apartment on the first floor on each side, and then stairs upstairs to the other
Yes.
2 apartments? Again, the second entrance would have an entrance for the two lower apartments and the two upper apartments.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And you indicated the units are about 600 to 650 square feet, correct?
That's correct.
But you will also be providing in the basement an area for storage should some of the tenants need to store some of their materials downstairs. And there will also be washers and dryers available for the tenants. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And the colors and the materials that are shown on the exhibit, and quite frankly, we didn't mark it, did we?
No, we did not, but was that part of the submitted set?
It's the
Yes, it's
exact
part
same.
of the
I believe it is.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
The colors on the exhibit and the submitted set would be the colors that you will be using for the building. It would be the gray and the
Yes,
gray stone.
that
So
is-
it will represent what what will be constructed if the board were to approve it. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
How big are the bedrooms? I didn't see any.
Each bedroom is about 10 feet by 12 feet with a walk-in closet.
Other questions?
I have a question. Is there any way, just curious, the units on the first floor, which are more likely to be occupied by handicapped people, is there any way to put a washer and dryer in the HVAC closet? 'Cause the basement, you would have to go downstairs, correct?
That is correct. There is not room in the current utility room. We would have to, we could certainly carve a space, maybe next to the refrigerator.
Something
Fit a
to think about.
3x3 stackable unit.
Any other questions?
Mr. Gazali?
Would you raise your right hand? You swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
I do.
Your name and address, please.
Robert Gazali, Gazzale, with Fisk Associates, 631 Union Avenue, Middlesex, New Jersey.
Mr. Gazali, are you a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey?
I am.
And have you appeared previously before this board and/or the planning board of the Township of Franklin and testified before other boards in central Jersey?
I have.
I would offer the testimony of Mr. Gazali as a licensed engineer.
Aye.
Mr. Gazali, you prepared the site plan that is the subject of this application?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, can you describe the subject property?
Okay. So our map of survey and existing conditions is shown on sheet 2 of the plan set, sheet 2 of 7. So the property address is 52. So sheet 2 of 7 is the existing condition plan.
Okay, and can you indicate to the board the shape of the lot and what's on the property?
Right, so as you can see, the property is L-shaped. It has frontage on both Franklin Boulevard and Norma Avenue, 50 feet of frontage on Norma and 61 feet of frontage on Franklin Boulevard. Norma parcel is 250 feet deep, and the Franklin Boulevard one is 235 feet deep, more or less. Combined, the lot area is almost 0.6 acres, 25,600 square feet. Located in the OP zone, and it's currently developed with a single-story and a two-story apartment buildings. As you heard, there are 5 apartments total, with a total of 9 bedrooms combined.
And the development of the site, where is it currently developed?
The site is developed from Norma to just about the rear line of that particular lot. So from Norma to about 235 feet back. The 2 buildings are long and narrow, and they are located on either property line, very close to the property line. And in fact, the building that's on the southerly side is actually off the property and encroaching on the neighbor's lot, along with a bit of concrete and sidewalk.
Okay. Can you indicate to the board what our proposal is?
Sure. The site plan is shown on sheet 1. The proposal is to remove all of the improvements currently on the property and essentially redevelop that portion. The proposed building is set back from Norma about 163 feet, which allows for a parking lot to be constructed between the building and Norma. There's no opportunity really to put the parking behind. The lot's only 50 feet wide, 24-foot wide aisle, and some setbacks. You'd have no buildable room left for the actual construction of the building. So we have 14 spaces proposed in front, which complies with the RSI requirement for 8 one-bedroom apartments. We also are proposing a trash enclosure adjacent to the parking lot in line with the access aisle. We're asking for a waiver on the dimensioning of the access aisle. We have it proposed at 24 feet. That's a pretty standard dimension, but Franklin's ordinance requires 26. So we have the minimum, what I consider the minimum dimension for the parking lot at 42 feet, which is an 18-foot parking space, 24-foot aisle, and that leaves us 8 feet left over, so the parking is located 4 feet from each property line. The building is, as I said, set back behind the parking. We've allowed some room for the trash enclosure and a walkway to the building, and then a concrete walkway along the northerly side that leads up to the 2 roofed porticos.
Now, can you describe what the adjacent land uses are to the subject property?
Right. Well, we do have a vicinity map on the cover sheet. So to our north and with frontage along Franklin Boulevard is a vacant lot, primarily wooded, similar in nature actually to Lot 2, which will remain in that condition. Behind our lot, or to the left of our lot, Mr. Asuncio has a residential building, apartment building. The next 2 lots running up Lewis are single-family dwellings. Then we have post office parking lot and another parking lot to the southwest.
So there are only 2 residential, single-family residential dwellings in this area, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and what is the approximate distance from the 2 dwellings themselves to our property line?
Well, to our building, so the back of Lot 13 is about 125 feet to the property line, about 135 feet, 37 feet to the building that we're proposing. And that's scaled off of, a Google image, so, it's within a few feet.
And the existing building that's currently there is actually partially on those properties, is it not?
Yeah.
Okay, so even notwithstanding all the other issues, by constructing a new building, it will be built on its appropriate property and not on somebody else's property, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you briefly take the board through the variances that we need, obviously because of the size of the lot, so that the board has a general idea of what all the bulk variances are?
There are some existing condition variances. Currently, pervious coverage on the property is 39.9%. We're going to lower that by about 630 square feet. However, that brings us to 37.4. We still exceed the zone maximum of 30%, even with that reduction. We have variances for lot frontage, which is required to be 300 feet for the garden apartment zone. And we have 50, as I said, on Norma, and we have 61 on Franklin. Also need variances for side yard. The roofed portico entrances count towards building setback. So on the northwest side, we'll have a setback of approximately 7.8 feet, and on the southwest side, we'll have a setback of approximately, southeast side, excuse me, 8.1 feet, and it's required that 40 be the minimum. The building as proposed exceeds the garden apartment standard for height of 30 feet, and it is proposed at 31 feet. Already said that it's 135 feet from existing single-family dwelling. We do have issues with buffers and setbacks to the parking lot. We're supposed to have a 10-foot wide buffer on either side, and of course, geometry only allows us to have 4. Now, we are proposing to plant an evergreen screen along both sides between the curb and the property line.
There's 2 feet on each side.
4.
4 on each side.
4 on each side.
Okay.
Yes. So, on the northwest side, we'll have some plantings. That's where the site lighting for the parking lot will be located in that 4-foot area. And the parking lot is supposed, notwithstanding the buffer, the parking lot is supposed to be 10 feet from the property line, and again, we have 4.
Okay, and that parking lot actually abuts my client's other building. It's their property that it's encroaching or infringing upon the side yard. Is that correct, basically?
Well, on one side, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the
Other side
vacant
is-
lot, which also in the OP zone as well.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Now, the other thing that is also of consequence is that this lot is a through lot in that it has frontage on 2 streets. It has frontage on Franklin Boulevard and also has frontage on Norma. Is that correct?
That's true.
And also, when the county reviewed this application, they indicated in their report that there is to be no access to this site from Franklin Boulevard, and that the only access should be from Norma. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. You can see, from the vicinity plan that the frontage on Franklin is on a bad curve. That would not be desirable. And this lot is wooded. So it made the most sense. All the utilities are in Norma, so that was the place to come in.
Okay. And our proposal is to merge the 2 lots into 1 lot as requested by the township staff, and to basically preserve the wooded area that's currently on the lot that fronts on Franklin Boulevard, correct?
Yeah. I
Okay.
think if you look at our grading plan, we're proposing 3 trees to come down. It's sheet 3, I think.
Okay. And, you referenced the garden apartment development. Mr. Healy asked us to review the garden apartment ordinance. And actually, this is not your typical site upon which a garden apartment complex is normally constructed. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's 1 building with 8 apartments.
Okay. So to the extent that we could, we tried to address some of the concerns of the township's garden apartment ordinance where it could fit and where it can't. We did the best we could. Is that correct?
That's true.
Okay. You mentioned site lighting. The site lighting is going to be on the right side of the property?
Yes.
And there was some comment in one of the reports that we have to control spillage. We'll do whatever we can to make sure that all the lighting remains on our site. Is that correct?
Yes. We've kept the fixtures as low as we can. They're 14 feet. But the site is only 50 feet wide. So we do have some minor spillage onto, the vacant land, again, in the OP zone, and onto the applicant's adjoining lot.
Okay. And I didn't ask Mr. Asuncio this, but we had a discussion yesterday. There are 14 parking spaces. They meet the RSIS requirements. It is our intent to designate 1 space per unit and then leave the remaining other spaces as visitor parking. Is that the way we intend to deal with the parking on the site?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. And also in discussing this matter with Mr. Sunzio, all refuse will be handled privately. He will be responsible for taking care of all the garbage on that site and having it removed. Is that correct?
That's true.
Wait, say that again?
All garbage will be handled privately, you know, we.
Does that mean all the tenants have to find their own garbage company?
No. The owner does. In other words, we have a dumpster, we will be responsible for contracting with our carrier to remove the garbage and the recycling.
Okay, all right.
The county is not interested in picking up the
Yeah,
recycling.
the county won't pick up the recycling,
That's something that's surprising too.
unless we can bring it to your house or something.
They come there.
Okay. And again, you mentioned something about the landscaping and buffering. Just briefly, so we have it all on the record, where are we providing landscaping?
Right. So we're providing landscaping along both sides of the parking lot. We have screening proposed around the trash enclosure. There is decorative foundation plantings along the northeast side of the building facing Norma, and then it runs down a distance to the first portico entrance along the northwest side. That's shown on sheet 4, I believe.
Okay.
So,
Now,
wait, so Mark had a comment about the location of the arborvitae.
Yes.
So
I think
since the applicant owns the lot next door, can you shift them closer to the property line?
Well, they're going to be right on the line almost, and I think that's what Mark's comment is, that we chose a green giant arborvitae for our screening material, and
Right, but if you push it closer to the adjacent property, because he has a wall and a fence there anyway,
yeah, and a parking
he's
lot.
not going to be using that little swath. You could move the landscaping closer,
Well,
plant it right on the property line,
sure.
because you're going to have vehicle overhang and they're going to get damaged anyway
Yep.
from the car.
Yeah, we could, yeah, that's fine.
and just following along that line, there were staff reports generated in conjunction with this application, were there not?
Yes,
And you've had an opportunity to review all of those reports?
I have.
And just for the record, we have a report from Mr. Healy, Director of Planning, dated July 2nd, 2018. We can comply with any of his comments concerning the landscaping or other screening and lighting that affects your area of expertise. Is that correct?
Yes.
And we've also reviewed the report of Scott Thomas, dated June 2018, and we can address all of those comments, can we not?
Yes.
And then we have Public Works had no comments. We do have to work with the Sewerage Authority, and we'll comply with them. Mr. House had some comments regarding an on-site fire hydrant.
Yeah,
you wanna-
my only comment on that is that RSIS would require a hydrant within 400 feet measured along the right-of-way. There is a hydrant at the intersection of Lewis and Norma, so we're within 400, but we'll talk to Mr. House about his particular concerns, and if he wants a hydrant, he'll get a hydrant.
Okay, and his other comments we will comply with? Okay. And the county, I discussed the prohibition on access to Franklin Boulevard, correct? And other than that, there were no significant comments from the county?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I have no...
Mr. Leffert, two questions, actually two questions on my report. I don't think have been discussed. One is, where would snow storage occur? It's such a tight site.
They'll have to take it off. There's no place to put it, so it'll have to be removed. You know, if it's a significant snowfall, we've got 4 feet from the curb to the property line, and that's going to be landscaping. We have a very small area at the head of the parking lot, which is the pedestrian access to the building and the trash enclosure. So I don't think there's any opportunity to plow significant amounts and leave it there.
And I'm ignorant about these things. Is that a common service that's provided? And maybe
Depending on,
your client may know.
I have a similar property in Woodbridge, same size lot, it's 70 units, and actually I have a skid steer, and we actually pick it up with skid steer and dump it into a mason dump, and send it out into a lot we have.
All right. And then the other questions that I have, so you mentioned there are some encroachments that need to be removed, the building, I think there's a wall.
Yeah.
How does that occur? What type of authorization do you need from those property owners? How does that happen? Can you explain that?
We would reach out to our buildings are actually encroaching on their property. We would reach out to them to seek permission to remove whatever portions of the building are on their property. And then, obviously, once we're done, we would agree to restore the property, and we would work with the adjoining property owner. We're going to have to do that. The new building, obviously, will not encroach on their property. I am sure they're not going to have an issue with us removing stuff that doesn't belong on their property.
What I would recommend is, since they are going to be working on somebody else's property, just to include the township staff and copy township staff on whatever correspondence is had between you and those adjoining property owners, so that if they come and question us, what's going on, we know why and when you're going to be on those sites.
We'd be happy to do that.
All right, thank you.
The other question?
Yes. Okay, so this is a through lot that they're talking about, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
L-shaped lot, actually.
All right,
but through.
and then on Scott Thomas's report here, number 4 on page 2, he's got consolidation of the two lots creates an illegal through lot. So how are you addressing that?
Well, see, this is what we call a technical variance, and by technical, it means, I mean, in my opinion, really has no real effect. I mean, when there's two lots that are going to be under the similar use, any type of application, township staff recommends that those lots be consolidated and made one, since they are now going to be one development site. By doing that, now currently you have two sites. One fronts on Franklin, one fronts on Norma. Our ordinance says you can't front on, unless you're a corner lot, you can't front on two separate streets. When you make those two lots one and make it one L-shaped lot, now they're technically going to be fronting on two separate streets, so they technically need the variance for that. And the reason I say it's technical is it's not actually changing the current situation. The only thing that's changing is the fact that it's one lot instead of two.
It'll be sort of irrelevant anyway, because you won't be able to access the lot in Franklin.
No, yeah, they won't, and first of all, they would need county approval to access it, and you may want to make that a condition if the board's inclined to approve it, to limit their access only to Norma.
Historically, we have a fair amount of through lots in Franklin Township where they front on one street and another street behind, and normally when we have that situation, the board imposes a condition that we only access from wherever the building fronts, and there will be no access from the other lot.
I have a question about, is this in the redevelopment zone?
No, it is in an OP zone.
Yeah,
It's next to the Hamilton Street Business District.
right.
Which is not a redevelopment area either. It is an area that the township is seeking to revitalize, and we did change the zoning in the Hamilton Street area to try to encourage more development, but it's not technically a designated redevelopment area.
So the OP zone is, it's still technically an OP zone.
It's zoned OP, it's zoned office professional. In that zone, there are, I'd say, very roughly, a third of it is actually developed for office professional use. This site is not, and obviously then the site that's bound by Norma, Franklin Boulevard, and this site, I guess to the bottom or to the right of that site, that's also zoned OP and is vacant, has not been developed as OP. But it's office professional, permits office buildings and single and two-family homes.
Do we ever think about changing the zoning there?
I'd have to look. We did do a master plan reexamination a year and a half ago. I don't recall if that issue is raised, but we can look. The planning board can look at that.
Yeah. It would seem like it would be appropriate given that there's an investment going in here to clean up a mess.
Yep, yep. Yeah, and this site, I mean, the larger site to the right of this property is, there's a lot more options, I would think, because the property it looks like it's probably a few acres in size and is nice and square. It has a lot of road frontage. This site is, I would say, probably impossible to zone for. It really is a site that, it's going to end up being some type of variance situation, and this is the one before you. You can't zone for property that's shaped like this, that's this width. It's such a unique, odd shape and width lot.
And does the
that's why-
post office still own the property, the parking lot?
I don't believe so. No, I think that's been sold, and that was an application, I believe, before this board to turn it into some type of special needs school, I believe, about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, that is owned by the same people that own the post office. There was an application for a special needs school on that site. It was approved by this board. They haven't done anything with respect to that yet. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but those two parcels are owned by one individual.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Colling.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Your name and address, please.
My name is Edward Colling, Kolling, 123 Oak Hill Avenue in Long Branch, New Jersey.
Mr. Colling, what is your occupation?
I am a professional planner in the state of New Jersey, licensed since the early 1980s. I also am certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners, also since that time. Graduated from Rutgers in 1974. I've been in the field of planning now for about 44 years.
It's okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Colling, you are familiar with the subject property?
Yes, I am.
You visited it?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and are you also familiar with the surrounding area and surrounding neighborhood, including Hamilton Street?
Yes, I've toured those areas as well.
And are you familiar with the zoning ordinance of the Township of Franklin and also with the Franklin Township Master Plan?
Yes, I took a look at both those documents as well.
Okay, and the property is in the OP zone, and that's why we're here this evening, is that correct?
That's correct. The multifamily use that's being proposed is not a permitted use within the zone, and there are more units than you would expect on a lot. So we were here for the D1 and a D5, as outlined in your planner's report. I just would like to point out that that at this time, though, as was already mentioned, there is already a multi-family use on the site. There's already 5 family structures that are on there, consisting of the distribution, as was already mentioned, and would result in about nine bedrooms. So it's already a multifamily use. We're trying to continue it. It will be expanded. The buildings will be removed with new construction so that it becomes a new D1 use variance. I look at it as the D5 being sort of subsumed within the D1 because by definition, if you're going to have a multifamily use, you're going to have more units than you would expect in, say, a 1 or 2 family. So it's kind of all one and the same.
Okay, so just, there's a building there now that's like a multifamily building with nine bedrooms?
Yes.
They're knocking that down. That's the building he was talking about, that the subflooring was a dirt subflooring, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right.
And actually, just to correct, there are 2 buildings there with the 9 bedrooms, not 1. There's 2 buildings.
It's a very odd arrangement on the site. It was done many years ago. You would never have to see that done today.
And as testified to by Mr. Ghazali, not only are the existing structures on the property and their condition unique, the property itself is somewhat unique, is it not?
It's very, very unique. It's an L-shaped lot, kind of wraps around that corner lot that was described before, the large corner lot. about 50 foot of frontage on Norma, about 60 foot of frontage on on Franklin Boulevard. You know, it would be very difficult to develop for pretty much any use. So as your planner mentioned, you would need variances for almost anything that were developed on this site. I think it's well suited for the multifamily residential use, in part because it's not well suited for an office use. It's on Norma. That's the only access. There is no access from Franklin Boulevard, so it's not on a well-traveled street. It's not something that people would see readily in terms of renting the office space. I don't know how much of a demand there is for office space in the area in general. I mean, if you look at the corner of Lewis and Franklin Boulevard, that office building is in pretty bad shape and appears to be vacant. So I think trying to develop this for permitted use would be very difficult. The multifamily use is probably the most appropriate, given that there's already a multifamily use next door. And as the applicant has testified to, he's seen a good demand for apartments such as he's proposing here.
Okay. In order to grant a variance, a use variance, a D1 or a D5, we are required to both prove the positive and negative criteria, are we not?
Yes.
And can you opine on that?
Well, in this case, I think part of the positive, a part of the beneficial is really obvious in terms of the removal of these dilapidated structures. They're an eyesore, they're a blighting influence on the neighborhood. I think removing that alone is a positive and is a benefit to the community. The building also, one of the buildings at least, intrudes into the private homes that front onto Lewis Street. Removing that intrusion, I think, is beneficial to those particular neighbors and to the area in general. I think the fact that the building that's being proposed is going to be much more attractive. It's going to be much more modern. It's going to have modern code, meet all current codes in terms of fire codes and things of that nature. So that's all beneficial. So I think in removing the blighting influence and replacing it with this type of structure, the granting of the variance to allow this structure would be a municipal action that would guide the appropriate development of the site. That's consistent with subparagraph 2A. Also, the removal of these dilapidated buildings that are obviously substandard and replacing them with a code-compliant building would also result in a more safe environment, not just for the occupants, but for the surrounding properties. Reduce the possibility of the hazard of fire. So that also is compliant with NJSA 40:55D2B. And then also the more desirable visual environment, which is subparagraph 2I, obviously removing these buildings and redeveloping the site for the type of building being proposed would be an improvement in that regard. So I think that we meet several of the purposes of the municipal land use law, which meets the positive criteria, as well as the improvements to the area in terms of removing those structures, just in terms of that benefit to the public good. Then you also have the negative criteria. I don't see any substantial detriment to the general welfare of the public good. As I mentioned, the removal of these dilapidated buildings is really going to be beneficial to the area. It's going to create a more code-compliant building instead of the dilapidated structures that are there now. It's going to be compliant with all parking standards of the RSIS. So I don't see any negative criteria to the public good or general welfare. And in terms of being a substantial detriment to the zone plan, as we've been describing, this property is already developed with a multifamily building. So by replacing a multifamily with a multifamily, I don't see how that could rise to the level of a substantial detriment. And therefore, I think we've met that negative criteria in that regard for this particular, the D variances.
Also, Mr. Colling, you sort of heard the discussion of Mr. Healy, I guess, in response to a question from Mr. McCracken concerning that although this is not in a redevelopment area, it's in a vicinity of the Hamilton Street Business District. One of the goals in the Hamilton Street Business District is to create more commercial establishments and residential establishments that would use the businesses on Hamilton Street. Do you have an opinion as to whether, if the board were to grant this variance, this would actually have a positive effect on some of the goals of the Hamilton Street Business District.
Yes, and I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Hamilton Street is a commercial corridor. It is in need of revitalization, and the best marketplace for a local business district is the local population. So the addition of additional families, additional persons within close walking distance of Hamilton Street will help to, I think, support the businesses that are there. So I think this is definitely would be helpful in that regard to that business district.
Okay, now also, Mr. Gazali reviewed the numerous bulk variances that we are seeking, the C variances, in conjunction with this application. Would you like to render and give the board your opinion with respect to the C variances that we need in order to construct this building?
Well, certainly, as Mr. Healy described, this is a very unique property. It's L-shaped. It goes from Norma back and then across to Franklin Boulevard. It'd be difficult to develop under any criteria. So I think that speaks to the hardship. You know, it's the specific shape and size of this property that creates the hardship in meeting the criteria, or really any criteria. Another thing that we look at is, although this is by definition a garden apartment, it really is not by definition a garden apartment development, because if you look at the definition of a garden apartment development, it discusses having at least 2 or more garden apartment buildings on a single lot. So that speaks to really how the size of this lot and what it's appropriate for. The garden apartment development standards were written for much larger lots, 10 acres and more. So if you try to apply those standards to a single 8-unit building, that could be looked at as a hardship in and of itself. Again, it's due to the size and shape of the existing property, and that's what creates the hardship in that regard. But notwithstanding these variants, I don't think there's the development would result in any substantial detriment to either the intent and purpose of the zone plan or the public good. As I've described before, the project itself will remove a blighting influence. It will create a much more aesthetically pleasing environment, a safer environment. So there is no substantial detriment to either the public good or the intent and purpose of the zone plan. So I think we meet the C1 criteria due to the hardship of the existing lot. But I think you could also look at this as a C2 variance as well, because there are substantial benefits, as I was describing, in terms, again, of removing the blighting influence, in terms of the redevelopment of the property, and the promotion of the municipal land use law. And then again, if you look at the detriments, which I've described a couple times now, there are no real substantial detriments to either the zone plan or to the public good. So you could look at this as the benefits substantially outweighing any detriment and grant the bulk variances as described by the engineer based on the C2 criteria as well.
Just one last question. The OP zone allows office buildings.
Yes.
If someone were to develop this site with an office building, we would be either before this board or the planning board for the same bulk variances. In other words, any development, even as a right development, would require bulk variances because of the condition, the shape of that lot. Is that correct?
I would agree with that, yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any board questions? One of the questions I have is, what's the average size, let's say, of the apartments that your client owns next door?
You got to use the microphone.
My 1-bedrooms are about 550 to 650. I have a 2-bedroom about 800 square feet.
Is there any thought on this particular site of maybe 4 apartments at the 800 or 1,000 square foot range as opposed to 8 600s?
We had some discussion with staff as to how to sort of design this property, and we were quite frankly discouraged from doing 4 2-bedroom apartments because of perhaps concerns for school children, then with the one-bedrooms, you're basically getting either individuals or a couple. With two bedrooms, then there are other different issues. Obviously, they could be done that way, but in our discussions with certain members of the township staff, they felt that the one-bedrooms were more appropriate.
I'm not disagreeing about the one-bedroom idea. I am concerned about the size, and if the size of the units were a little bigger and the number of the units were cut in half, you wouldn't need as much parking space. You wouldn't need, there are a lot of little issues that might work themselves out differently. And then the other thing, which I heard here, is if this were developed as zoned, we'd still be listening to an application with the same types of variances. But if it were developed as zoned, wouldn't the intensity of the use likely be less?
It would be different. I don't know if it would be less if there were offices there or medical offices. They may generate more traffic in that area than would basically 8 one-bedroom apartments. So I don't know if it would be a different impact. I don't think it would necessarily be less of an impact, but it would be a different use. But I mean, I guess the other question, Mr. Thomas, is it really appropriate, as Mr. Collins said, to consider that site for an office use? It just doesn't make any sense, given that there's not too far from there empty office buildings that have visibility along Franklin Boulevard. So I think you'd be creating a white elephant there if you developed an office building.
Well, in an L-shaped lot like this, Mr. Healy, is it forever impossible to close off the access on Norma Avenue and have an access on Franklin Boulevard if it were developed as office professional?
Ask the
If
question again.
we're assuming with this application that that part of the property is totally useless other than to just be there. There's no way that any part of that property could be used to maybe limit some of the space issues with the application, move the building back further from the street?
Well, there's a couple different issues there. I mean, if they were to, I mean, I'm not sure that you know, the portion of the site that comes off of Franklin isn't that much wider anyway, so you're going to have a lot of the same variances. If you take the building and kind of put it around the corner, you would open up some space within the developed portion of the site, but then you're going to end up increasing the overall impervious because you're going to be pulling the parking lot and pulling the drive aisles back. And then you're also putting the building kind of around and out of sight. I'm not so sure that's such a good idea either.
Oh, I'm just not convinced that 8 units are better than developed as zone. What I am
Yeah, I'm not
convinced-
addressing that. That's a different issue.
Yeah, what I'm convinced of, though, is whatever goes there is obviously unbelievable improvement over what is there. But really, the density of this bothers me.
Well, I mean, that's something to discuss with the applicant. I mean, their proposal is 8 one-bedroom apartments.
How do you market 600 square foot apartments? Or what audience are you marketing it to? And how do we know as a township that it's not inhabited initially by one person or 2 people and it ends up 4 or 5 people in a 600 square foot apartment?
Well, again, like I said, the building I had right immediately to the left of the subject property, the average square footage is 5 to 650 maybe for the one bedrooms. And like I said in the beginning, it's funny how when one person moves out, even though I don't advertise it, I have 5 people give me a call. I don't know if it's family members that live in the building that know the size of the apartments. I get 5 calls at least saying, "Do you have an opening for the apartments?" So I could assure you that vacancy will not be a problem there.
Well, I do believe we have to rely on your credibility,
I wouldn't-
running
I wouldn't build them
a
at
good
600
operation.
square feet if I couldn't rent them.
But the other board questions,
Question.
comments?
What's your average length of lease in your current building for this?
Oh, they're one-year leases. Since I've taken over the building, every new person that's come to, I don't know, since we managed the building has stayed there. We haven't had any turnover since they came.
And how many of those apartments are rented by students?
None. No, sir.
Questions?
Mr. Thomas, can I go back to what your initial point was about access on Franklin Boulevard? The county has prohibited, and whether it was going to be developed as an office building or as residential, I am sure, based on the curvature of that road where it is, that they will not allow an access on Franklin Boulevard, because there is an alternative means to getting to the site, which is in fact Norma. That's right on that curve as you're coming down off of Hamilton Street.
Hey, that does make a difference in developing it as zoned. That, we didn't have that information before. Any other comments? You're finished, right?
Other than summation.
I'll let the records show there's no public, unless the newspaper wants to make a comment, which I'm sure the newspaper will anyway in the morning. So we will not bother opening to the public, and we'll close whatever you have to sum up with.
Yeah, I'll try to be very brief. As I said in my opening, this is probably one of the worst pieces of property I've had to present an application on in many years and for many reasons. I think taking on this task by Mr. Asuncio is a noble thing. It is going to be an improvement to the neighborhood. It's going to be an improvement to the existing apartment complex that he owns next door. That's why he bought it. And I think, given the fact that we are adjacent to an existing apartment complex, given the fact that based on the testimony of Mr. Colling of what's out there today as far as the need for office space and office building, this site is inappropriate to be developed as per the OP zone. And as Mr. Healy sort of suggested, you look at this site and try to figure out how to best use it, and I think we've come up with the best way to use the subject property without overdeveloping it, without impacting on our neighbors. We're reducing the impervious coverage that's currently there. We're getting rid of what's there. And I think that only positive things can come from this. And I think the 600 square foot apartments do have a market. Not everybody wants a 2-bedroom or 1,200 square foot apartment. And I think based on Mr. Asunzio's expertise, because he is in the business, he feels that these units can be rented and occupied. And again, they will have a positive effect on not only this property, but the general neighborhood. I think the testimony is really compelling for the grant of both the D1 and D5 variances, as well as the bulk variances because of the shape of this lot, and I would respectfully request that the variances be granted.
Okay, any questions, comments, or motions?
I move that ZBA 18-00007, we approve the variances requested. I think this, similar to my comments on the shopping center, I think this is a vast improvement for that area. I mean, it looks like a slum right now, and being that this developer, Meridian Developers, have had success with the same size apartments, we are in need of affordable housing, not government supported, but real affordable housing in this area. And if they feel they can rent that size apartment at a remarkable rate, I think we should approve these variances.
I think they were also looking for a waiver for the 24-foot instead of 20,
That's one of the variances.
That's one of the variances.
Yep.
Yes.
sorry?
That is one of the variances.
Oh, he has said that he was looking for a waiver, so, all right.
Anything else? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, poll the board.
Laura Grauman,
Yes?
Donald Johnson,
Yes.
Bruce McCracken.
Yes.
Alan Rich,
Yes.
Robert Shepherd.
Yes.
Joel Reese.
Yes.
Chairman Thomas.
Hey, despite my questions, I think the improvement's well worth the votes. I vote yes also.
Thank you very much.
Before we adjourn, there was an item on the agenda, lawsuits. We moved to this part of the meeting. It's not necessary to close.
You could build an
It is
office
not,
building
there's,
there.
it's
You could
it's
build
not
an
settlement
office building. You just
negotiations
need
or
to
anything.
pay some.
It's just a status update. I handled two matters for the board. One of them is now concluded. That was the time of the decision case where the garden apartments came before you, and your zoning officer found that a use variance was necessary. The matter went all the way to the Supreme Court, and to make it short, the Supreme Court upheld Franklin Township's zoning board and zoning officer. So that case is over. The zoning board won, the zoning officer won, and the garden apartment developer lost. So that's that one. The other piece of litigation that I'm handling is the Central Jersey Charter School that came before you for a use variance to move their school from one office building to another office building. You voted to grant that. The landlord from the original office building objected to you doing that and filed suit against the zoning board, the charter school, and the new landlord. Judge Miller, there were actually two lawsuits because they came before you two times. The first time, you had concerns over the location of the gymnasium and its proximity to the pipeline. So they removed that part of the application from the original application, and you just voted on the use variance. They then came in with an amended application for just the gymnasium, and you voted to grant the new location of the gymnasium since it was no longer within the pipeline setback. Judge Miller ruled in favor of the zoning board's decision on both of those appeals, and the original landlord has now appealed that to the appellate division. They filed their briefs last week. I have not read them yet because I was on vacation. Our brief is due in, I believe, the third or fourth week of September, but I will file briefs in opposition to that, basically suggesting that Judge Miller and the zoning board was correct and that the appellate division should uphold those decisions. Unfortunately, the appellate division takes quite a bit of time, so that decision will probably not come out before mid to late 2019.
Question. I'm not a lawyer or anything. Why does the old landlord have status board if he lost a tenant?
That's part of the arguments that he really doesn't have. And on the zoning board, we didn't push that much because the new landlord made that point. But to land use matters.
Yeah.
But no, this is the,
Yes.
you're talking about the, this is on, the new site is on,
Meadows
yeah,
Road.
Meadows
The
Road.
White
Yes,
Elephant.
yes, yes, on Meadows.
New site is Metlers.
Yes, yeah, it's the White Elephant building, yeah.
Well, they've appealed both of the decisions, so they're both in the appellate division.
Now,
But we mean the first one, do you mean the one you described that went to the Supreme Court, or are you still? Oh, okay.
now, if they sue the zoning board, you have to pay you to defend ourselves. They lose, do they have to pay our legal fee?
They do not. There is no provision in New Jersey law for that.
That's too bad.
So in land use cases, each party pays their own lawyer.
Okay,
pretty
I don't
much
want to
it.
jinx it, but our
Thank you.
board and attorneys have a pretty good record over the last
Good.
10 years or so when it comes to court. Is there a motion to move?
Moved.
Adjourn? Okay, meeting adjourned.
When's our next meeting?